In this video, we're going to take a look at pKC-Live, which is an optional update for users of one of our combination presets. In particular, it's the pKC LCS plus LCG plus LDR preset. So if you've purchased that preset or a package that contains it and you're interested in this update, just go to the forum, to the pKC series board, and there's a pKC-Live thread that tells you what you need to do. You basically just need to send me an email, though. First, we'll take a look at the global controls. These are controls that stay the same regardless of which mode you're in. And actually, all the controls on the pad control are global, except for the pads and these three buttons here. The function of those changes depending on which mode you're in, but everything else stays exactly the same. Alright, so to give you a quick run through, this button is your shift button, just like in the previous version. Here you've got a transport section. That's exactly how it was in the previous version. Above that, you've got an additional set of transport controls, tap tempo, metronome, and overdub. These also have shifted functions for controlling views. You can switch between session and arrange, switch between clip and track view, and hide and show the detail view. This button accesses the mode selection page, where you can switch between the preset's modes, and we'll look at those in detail in just a little bit. This button can also function as a visual metronome. When Live's playing back, it'll flash in sync with the beat. Alright, up here, you've got Q level and master level. These buttons give you access to your quantization menus. This is record quantization, which is off right now. You can set a new value with the encoder. And this accesses the global quantization menu. And again, you can change the value with the encoder. The XY pad has 6 different functions that you can select between with these buttons here. By default, it controls the grid selector, and that chooses which group of clips and tracks you're controlling. Next, it can navigate tracks and scenes. And notice that as you're moving around, it'll show you the name of the selected clip with the track number listed at the end. And if there's no clip selected, it'll just show you the track number. Alright, next it can function like arrow keys, which is useful for stuff like moving around in the browser. Alright, next it can control the last filter device on a track like autofilter or the filter and operator and a couple of other instruments. Alright, next you have device control. And by default, it'll control the first 2 device parameters, but you can change that around in the XY assign mode, which I'll show you in just a little while. Alright, and lastly, I can control the crossfader. Alright, you can smoothly crossfade from left to right, from the bottom 2/3, and in the top third, you can center the crossfader. The encoder can do a variety of different functions. You can select between them with Shift plus the encoder. Alright, by default, it'll navigate scenes. Alright, next it can navigate tracks. Alright, next it can navigate devices. It'll also show device names in the display. Alright, next you've got tempo control in 1 BPM increments. Next you've got global groove control. Next you can transpose the selected clip. Alright, this also works for MIDI clips as well. Next you've got start time control. If you're in session view and a clip is selected, this will adjust the start time of the clip. If no clip is selected or you're in arrangement view, this will adjust the start time of the arrangement loop. Alright, end is the same, alright, except it's for end times. Next you've got group control. This can expand or collapse groups. Alright, next you've got monitoring status control. Alright, next is crossfader assignment. Then you've got volume and pan. And then finally you've got some keystroke functions, up, down, left, right, and plus and minus. This mode gives you a 4x4 clip grid to work with. The LEDs indicate where your clips are. If a clip's playing, it'll flash in sync with the tempo. If it's waiting to play, it'll do a double time flash. Alright, this button plus the last column will launch scenes. This button plus the bottom row will stop clips. This button plus the top row will select tracks. And finally, this button plus the last pad here will stop all clips. In this mode, you can select tracks with the top row, mute tracks here, solo tracks, and arm tracks. Alright, with these buttons over here, if any track in your set is muted, this button will light up. If any track is soloed, this one will light up. If any track is armed, this one will light up. And then you can unmute all, unsolo all, and unarm all. In this mode, you can chop clips up or play them chromatically. It has 3 sub-modes. There's a chop mode and then 2 chromatic modes. In the chop mode, the pads will be assigned to 16 evenly distributed start points based on the length of the selected clip. So it basically splits the clip into 16 parts, and you can then trigger the parts from the pads. Alright, so to show you how this works, I'm just going to play a clip all the way through, and the second time around I'll make changes to it. Alright, in the chromatic modes you can transpose clips, and the first one you can transpose them with descending pitches, and then the second one does ascending pitches. In this mode, you could select how the XY pad's device function works. As I showed before, by default you'll be controlling the first 2 device parameters. You can change that here. Alright, the top 8 pads select the parameter for X to control. It'll also show the name of the parameter in the display. Alright, and the bottom pads select the parameter for Y to control. Alright, up here, this button will show the name of the selected device, and these buttons choose how the XY pad's touch function works. By default, that's turned off. If you turn this button on here, what this will do is reset device parameters to their default state when you release the pad. Alright, with this button on, the device will be on when your finger's on the XY pad, and it'll turn off when you release it. Alright, and finally you've got some global functions from the pads. Shift plus this button here will randomize all 8 device parameters, and Shift plus this pad over here will reset all 8 device parameters. In this mode, you can step sequence into MIDI clips. It requires that the clip be in 4/4 and that it's at least 1 bar long. Alright, you can actually sequence up to 8 bars with it though. Alright, so to show you how it works, I'm just going to play the sequencer here. And the first thing you do is choose a note to sequence. In this case, I already have the note that I want, C1, which is a kick drum in this kit. Alright, next I'm going to go to D1, which is a snare in this kit. Alright, and then I'm going to go to the hi-hat. Alright, now real quick, all the steps I've turned on so far have had a fixed velocity. You can change that by pressing this button, and you can choose a different fixed velocity, or you can choose a randomized velocity, which I'll choose here. Alright, so I've got a simple 1 bar pattern. What I'm going to do now is copy this pattern to the second bar. You can do that by pressing Shift, and then choosing your source bar up here on the top 8 pads, and then choosing the destination bar down here. Alright. Now to change what part of the clip you're looping and editing, you can press this button here. The top 8 pads choose which part you're editing. I'm going to choose bar 2. And then the bottom pads choose which part is looping. I'm going to choose bar 2 as well. Alright, now I'll just make some changes to it. Alright, real quick, I just want to mention that you can fold notes, just like the fold note function in Live, so that when you're going through with the encoder here, you only go through the note lanes that are active in the clip. Alright, rather than having to scroll through all note lanes. Alright. Alright, and now I'm going to bring the first bar back in, and now I have a quick 2 bar pattern. In this mode, you can capture notes from MIDI clips in Live and assign them to the pads. It'll actually capture the first 16 unique notes and assign them to the pads in note order. Alright, so for this example, I'm going to be using a clip with some chords in it. I'll just play that for you real quick. Alright, so to capture the notes from that clip, I'm just going to press Shift plus pad 16, and now the notes are assigned. Alright, once you've got the notes here, you can make some changes to them. You could transpose them up or down 24 semitones. So I'll go up an octave in this case. Alright, and you can also add notes. Right now, each pad is just playing 1 note. They can play up to 3 notes by using these functions here. So I'll add a note 7 semitones up, or maybe an octave up. And I can also add another note that's an octave down. Whoop. User mode is identical to the user mode from the LCS component. Right? The drum mode is identical to the LDR component, except that it's now natively compatible with drum racks and impulse.